So yesterday I was making some phone calls and I called a gentleman and I remember we were on the phone, and in my business I'm regularly calling clients and prospects and things like that, but this conversation was unique because I think it's reflective of what's going on in our country right now. It was a gentleman my age, about 40 years old, and I was talking to him about, I asked him, where are you at in your life? What's going on in your life right now? And he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, are you looking to make more money? Are you looking to get out of debt? Are you looking to, maybe it's like having kids, getting married, buying a house? What is most important to you at this stage? And the conversation paused for a while, and he didn't know what to say. And I said, and I just had a feeling on my heart, something came on my spirit. It was just a level of discernment that said, are you struggling with depression and anxiety? Are you dealing with any mental issues? Are you dealing with confidence? And then I felt the emotion on the call. Now, keep in mind, I don't know this person. I have no relationship with the individual. I'm imagining what the person can look like, but I don't know what the person looks like. I've never met the man. But I felt something strong on my heart to talk about it. And I said, hey, are you dealing with anything mental-wise? And he goes, how do you know where I'm at right now? We've been on the phone for about 2 minutes. And I said, something just came over me to bring that up, and I don't know why not. And I said, tell you what, why don't you come into my office? Come in today. Come in later today. Now, I didn't know where the conversation was going to go or anything like that. I was just referred to this gentleman. But we spent 2 hours together pouring into, me pouring into him and hearing where he's at in his life. And some of it was business related, but most of it was just what men are going through today. And, 20 years ago, if you brought up the subject of depression or anxiety, especially to men, for crying out loud, they would say things to you like, they would call you names. They would harass you, bully you, say negative things, or you use your imagination of what we would call each other maybe 20 years ago. It wouldn't be nice. It wouldn't be good. 10 years ago, you bring up depression or anxiety to a man and you start thinking like, hey, something's going on here. There's something going on. I think more and more people are dealing with mental issues or mental stress, or maybe they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they're willing to open up about it. But 10 years ago, a little bit. Today, it's like every third person you talk to, every other person you talk to is going through something like this. I'm fortunate to be in front of a lot of people in my business. I'm always on stage in front of a lot of individuals. And when I bring up this subject, look, we could talk about inflation. We could talk about immigration. We could talk about Republicans and Democrats, or vaccines or no vaccines, or we could talk about a lot of sensitive issues in the country. But I'm telling you, among many of them, one of the biggest ones that's coming up the most, it's what's going on right here. What's going on in our mind? What's going on in our heart? What's going on in our spirit? And obviously, being a faith-based person, I talk to people about how's your spirit, how's your emotion, how's your mental, how's your physical, and how's your financial well-being. These are the different checks and balances that we go through with people. But especially, I know it's for men and women, and being a man and talking from the male perspective, I could tell you that men always put on this face, or quite often they put on this face that everything's okay. You ever asked a guy how he's doing? Hey man, what's going on? How's everything? And think about the average guy you know. Oh, I'm fine. It's okay. Or oh, everything's cool, man. What do you got going on? But many of these answers are lies. Many of these answers, and it's not the lie to deceit or to be deceitful. It's a lie to cover up a fact that something deeper is going on in our minds. And we're living in a society today that's literally the formula for depression and anxiety. Open up your phone, scroll other people's lives, look at what's going on from the best viewpoint of everybody's posts and clicks and views and all these pictures that everybody's posting. And it's the formula for being depressed. It's the formula for having anxiety, because we are commonly not dealing with other people as much as we have in the past, where if you had a problem in the past, you had to go face that problem and deal with that person. But today we could just delete that relationship, stop dealing with that person, or we're living more and more on what do they call these things? The video game land, or we're at home and we're watching videos all the time, which I hope you subscribe to the Leader for Life channel and keep watching these videos. But we're not trying to live in these alternate universes. We're trying to live amongst people. And I know that human beings are social creatures, but we're dealing with ourselves socially less and less and less. And I know you've probably heard something like this already. This isn't a foreign concept, but I just wanted to talk it out a little bit, because I know that I've dealt with this for most of my life. I was 19 years old, and I remember having a lot of problems as a college age person. And I never wanted to talk to anybody about any of them because you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to be right, you're supposed to be tough. You're a man. Don't act like that. You don't almost don't even want to believe or go down these paths. But I know that millions and millions of men could benefit from a conversation like this. So if I could add just a little bit to your life, I want to do that. We're struggling. We're struggling. We're struggling out there. I meet with men on a regular basis over and over and over again, whether it's on client services or about coaching them or helping them get to the next level. And it seems like they're more and more distant from reality, and they're less and less aware of what's going on around them. And I don't know, maybe they don't know how to deal with certain things, but I know I was in that spot and I didn't know what to do. And I remember opening up to a doctor. I went to a doctor's appointment, and he said, "How are things?" And it was just a regular checkup. And I'm 19 years old. I'm healthy. I'm in shape. I don't take medication. I'm everything's fine, but it's not fine. And I remember I just had this moment when I was in the doctor's appointment, and I said, I get irritated. I get bothered. I get frustrated. I don't know how to deal with things. And sometimes I want to go drinking, or sometimes I want to just like go have fun, or I watch a football game and just yell at football players for a couple hours. And I would notice that I would look for things that would avoid the reality of the life that I was living, and I would constantly seek this out. Now, this was before social media and us living on our phones and everything. It'd probably be 10 times worse if it was. But I'm looking at the suicide rate in our country right now. I'm looking at the rate at which people are just violent with one another or withdrawn from one another. And the behavior of us as people doesn't seem to be advancing the way technology is advancing. Technology is doing great, but human beings are not doing as great. And so I remember telling the doctor this, and like most medical personnel, and I'm not saying all, and I'm not judging everybody, but there's a medicine for that. Here's an antidepressant. And I remember going, antidepressant? Why would I take an antidepressant? I'm not depressed. And he said, no, it's not just for depression. An antidepressant can be also for a chemical imbalance, which is the way that we label a lot of things in our society. Young kids misbehaving, it's a chemical imbalance. Or you have issues, it's a chemical imbalance. Maybe it is a chemical imbalance, maybe it's not. I don't know. But I didn't see anybody go into my brain and look at levels of chemicals. It was just diagnosed based off of me saying that I was irritated sometimes, frustrated sometimes, withdrawn sometimes, and it was, you have a chemical imbalance. And I remember saying, hey, here's a pill. And I remember going, okay, I didn't know anything different. I didn't know what to do. And I'm not judging any doctors or anybody else like that, because that relationship's between you and your doctor, and there's a lot of different patients and a lot of different doctors, and there's tons of variables. But way too often we diagnose what could be fixed in other ways with medicine. And so I remember taking an antidepressant, and I believe this is what I needed, because when I took that, it was just a small dosage, and I took it for many years. And I never wanted to talk about people about that, but I think that today we have a lot of people on antidepressants. And if it's good for you and it's best for you, then obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you to take them or not take them. But I know for me, I kept thinking, what if I didn't take this? And so one time I stopped doing it for 30 days. And I was a little irritated again, a little frustrated, a little withdrawn, same types of symptoms. And so I said, okay, I need to go back to this. And what it became was, it was no longer a tool to help me get to the next level. It became a crutch. It became something that I think that I needed to do on a regular basis. And so in my mind, I started believing that I needed to do this. And maybe that helped me for a period of time. Maybe it didn't. Maybe I needed to get older and become more mature. I'm not sure. But several years back, a few years back, I said, you know what, I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I went through the process, and I don't take an antidepressant anymore. And I feel more alert. I feel more aware. I feel like I have a better perspective. I feel like I feel more empowered to conquer different things that I go through as a person, as a man, without medication versus having that. And it's like reading books. Like I grabbed one right here. Max Lucado right here has Anxious for Nothing. I remember reading this book, and it felt better than any of the medicine that could potentially happen, because it felt like somebody was talking about anxiety. I never felt depressed, but maybe I had depression. I'm not sure how all of it works, but the more and more that I read about it, the more I feel like we live in a society today that wants to label your problems as a chemical imbalance. that wants to label our problems with a medication you could go take. But we're not talking about our daily habits. We're not talking about things like, I go through 5 different check boxes when I talk to men about this. I say, what level of awareness do you have about your life and those that are around you? You know, are you aware about your day to day? Or are you just kind of lost in your own headspace? And that could help some people. Maybe it's the perspective. You know, do you have a healthy perspective on life? What are you expecting out of life, and what's the reality? And sometimes we have these disappointments, and we know that disappointment is when reality does not meet expectations. And so that gap of what we expect and then what's really happening creates this disappointment. And sometimes we don't know how to handle disappointment, because especially I did a video on our school systems, and we tend not to make people feel, how do I say, we tend to make people feel like it's okay, you just go through. We don't try to work through it, or we don't try to teach conflict management, or we don't say that's not okay, or you need to improve in this area. We tend to just say, okay, great, next kids, everybody's the same, everybody's God's children, when in reality, I don't think that that's true. And I think it gives you a false perspective on reality. And then you end up being disappointed with what happens in your life. I look at things like our associations. I mentioned scrolling through social media platforms. I love technology, and I love that people are able to access each other, even a video like this one. But sometimes it's really tough for people because their associations are less and less people that are pouring positive things into them, and more a self-fulfilling prophecy of listening to what I want to hear. And sometimes when we're off track mentally, we look for more cases and more proof that validates the way that we feel instead of what the truth is. And so sometimes we're putting our feelings ahead of facts. And feelings are really important, and you should pay attention to feelings. But sometimes we need to look at what truth is and what fact is, and not just how we feel about it. The language and the affirmations that we give each other. We say things, and we say our self-talk tends not to be very encouraging or positive. Our self-talk sometimes goes down, especially in the absence of positive influences, great role models and coaches. Maybe it's a parent that pours good things into your head, or maybe it's a teacher or coach that gives you good things, or the books that we're recommending. Maybe it's the associations of the people that we're hanging out with that sometimes affects our thinking. And then finally, just being in motion. Historically, a man would be upright and be walking and be outside and working in fields, or working construction, or working something where you sweat. Maybe you're working outside and you're working with other men, and you're having to accomplish these tasks. And several men out there today are still doing those things, and they're actually the happiest men in society. If you survey happiness and you ask people, are you currently happy with your life? You know where the happiest people are? They're plumbers, electricians, construction workers, people that accomplish a task, and they're not looking at a phone, but they're accomplishing a task that's benefiting other people, and they get gratified, and they're sweating and they're working hard that are out there. Now, I'm not saying people that work in offices all day long or sit on computers all day long are not happy, but there's a higher degree of happier people that are out there accomplishing something, especially doing it alongside other people, specifically other men. But today we work more and more by ourselves. In a post-COVID generation, we still have a lot of our workers that are working at a home. That's not a problem, and I'm not criticizing working out of your house, but who's pouring into you? Are you good enough, or do you need to find extra sources of people that are pouring positive things into your mind? And when I would hear this before, let me be real with you. When I would hear positive thinking or pouring positive things in your mind, I remember dismissing that. I remember hearing that and going, oh, please get real. But in reality, it's not just positive like, yay. It's positive more like, hey, let me give you some steps and instruction on how to improve and how to be better in your life. And we need to find more of these sources like these books. We need to find more mentors, and we need to make sure that we're attending meetings that support our growth, our spiritual growth, our emotional growth, our mental growth, our physical growth, as well as our financial growth. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel, Leader for Life. Love for you to like the video. Give me some comments. Give me some feedback of what we could do to make sure to help you become a leader for life.